Greetings everyone. Welcome to the lecture on linguistic reorganization. At the time of independence in 1947, India consisted of several disjointed princely states that had been merged together to form 27 states. The grouping of states at that time was done on the basis of political and historical considerations rather than on linguistic or cultural divisions, but this was only to be a temporary arrangement. On account of the multilingual nature and differences that existed between various states, there was a need for the states to be reorganized on a permanent basis. Back in the 1920s, the Indian National Congress had promised that once the country won independence, each major linguistic group would have its own province. However, after independence, the circumstances of partition and chaos all over did not result in any immediate steps being taken in this direction. The 1942 Quit India resolution of the Congress pledged the largest measure of autonomy for the federating units. Politics moved into different gears, however, in 1946, with the British government sending the cabinet mission to explore the political future of India. Now, we have been discussing the various processes, the events that led to reorganization of states. But generally speaking, what are the reasons that are usually there behind any kind of reorganization? So, if we talk about the important issues, one is the emotional integration of different linguistic groups and how linguistically homogeneous units are perceived as the logical way of governance. Then state level elevation, where it would be possible to enjoy the powers and facilities that the people believe that they have been denied historically and they could claim once they belong to a new state. Then rising consciousness among ethnic minorities. Then also an easier consolidation of demands. Then widespread sense of discrimination, whether it is faced by the ethnic minority communities that feel agitated due to lack of development or a sense of discrimination which prevails. Then also the issue of economic backwardness results in these kind of demands in the belief that probably with the granting of statehood, then development would enter a different phase altogether. Also the availability of fewer opportunities that such movements gain attention when they are led by an effective and powerful leader. So, if we talk about now the circumstances that led to the linguistic reorganization of states in India. After independence, a major problem that was faced by the people of princely states was related to language. There were many princely states with people who were speaking different languages. So, there were demands from different parts of the country for the formation of states on the basis of language. And in 1920, at the Nagpur session, Indian National Congress had also resolved to form its state committees on the basis of language. So, after independence, people now agitated for the formation of states along linguistic lines, because this is what they had been promised. And it was in this background that Potti Sri Ramalu, a freedom fighter, started Satyagraha for the formation of Andhra Pradesh for Telugu speaking people. And after 58 days of fasting, his martyrdom resulted in some kind of an intensified mass agitation, following which in 1953 the government of India formed the state of Andhra Pradesh for Telugu speaking people. And after this, there was a chain reaction with the demand for linguistic states intensifying more and more. So the government of India formed a commission to reorganize Indian states on the basis of languages, with Fazl Ali as the chairman and H.N. Kunzru and K.M. Panikkar as the members. And as per the recommendations of the commission, the Parliament passed the States Reorganization Act in 1956, and hence 14 states and 6 union territories came into being. And later on, new states were formed in various phases. India had faced several challenges after independence, and one among them was the challenge of reorganization of Indian territories on linguistic basis. In fact, our national movement had rejected the boundaries that had been created and drawn by the colonizers. So they wanted to reorganize the state boundaries and reflect some kind of a reorientation in the entire process. And overall, the idea was definitely to preserve the unity of India while celebrating the linguistic and cultural diversity. The formation of Andhra Pradesh spurred the struggle for making other states on linguistic basis. This forced the government to appoint the States Reorganization Commission in 1953 to look into the question of redrawing the state boundaries. However, the leaders feared separatism in the newly formed nation, and the entire process required a lot of discussion and deliberation. At the time of independence, India had been fragmented into several princely states and provinces of British Indian states. So these provinces of British Indian states, along with the several Indian states after independence, were kind of going haywire, and the question of the criteria of integrating these kingdoms and provinces into feasible administrative units became very urgent. The idea of reorganizing the states on the basis of linguistic criteria was rejected by Dhar Commission and then JVP Commission. But in 1953, States Reorganization Commission, which is also known as Fazl Ali Commission, allowed the linguistic criteria in principle while giving primacy to administrative convenience. The formation of linguistic states has acted both in favor and against the cause of Indian unity, as it can be discussed. Firstly, it has led to a lot of development of vernacular languages, imparting of education in local languages, and overall facilitating the literacy rate of the country. It has led to fulfillment of aspirations of people to have autonomous political units for governance, therefore strengthening the idea of democracy as well as unity of the country. It has also enabled the preservation of local customs, traditions, culture, festival, identities, and over time the people of India have come to cherish diverse range of customs of different states. Then it has also resulted in rise of regionalism. Linguistic states have strengthened the political narrative of certain sections that allowed them to propagate regionalism, thus promoting the sense of separate identity, which sometimes works against the principle of unity and integrity of the nation. Rise in the number of interstate disputes is also a worrying factor. Today, language has become an issue of dispute between states. Linguistic minorities have been considered alien and their rights are being suppressed. So, infighting has taken place between sections of people on the basis of language, and the core of Indian unity becomes endangered. This is all the more a worrying factor because language is ultimately a binding factor. It connects a human to human. It is a medium of communication. So when it becomes a source of conflict, it's really a sad state of affairs. So several attempts were made and rejected for the formation of states in India based on linguistic grounds. Two distinct bodies were set up to evaluate the requirements for the division of Indian states based on the languages. Dhar Commission, which was a linguistic provinces commission that came up in 1948. This linguistic provinces commission was set up by the Constituent Assembly to look into the need to form states on a linguistic basis. S.K. Dhar, the judge of Allahabad High Court, was appointed as the head. And finally, the commission submitted a report on 10th December 1948. This commission rejected the idea of reorganization based on language and suggested it should be based on administrative convenience, including historical and geographical considerations. Then the next important JVP committee of 1948 was formed to re-examine the need for reorganization of Indian states on a linguistic basis and also to study the recommendations of Dhar Commission. This committee consisted of Jawaharlal Nehru, Pattabhi Sitaramaiah and Vallabhbhai Patel. This committee submitted its report in April 1949, according to which the plan of division based on language again got rejected. So, linguistic reorganization of states was a process which continued to be a long drawn out one. As the government dissolved the plan for the formation of states in India based on linguistic division, there were protests in several regions of the country. As I have already discussed that how since 1920s this was the idea that had been floating around, and this was the dream that the Congress itself had shown to the provincial committees. So the Kannada, Malayalam and Marathi speaking people wanted their state, and over time this agitation became intense, and the most vigorous protest came from the Telugu speaking people, which was back then part of the Madras Presidency. And during the 1952 general election propaganda, the people of this region showed their disagreement with Nehru with black flags and raised demand for a separate state of Andhra for the Telugu speaking people. So the Vishal Andhra movement demanded a separate state. This was supported by several leaders and people, and finally the hunger strike by Poti Sri Ramalu, a veteran Gandhian, which ultimately resulted also in his death, further triggered protests. His strike went on for 58 days and several people had gathered around him for the support. And when he died, due to the hunger strike, it became difficult to control the widespread protest, and the government was forced to accept people's demand, as a result of which the state of Andhra Pradesh was formed on October 1st, 1953. So it was the first state to be included on a linguistic basis. There were similar demands that were now being raised in several other states, and by December 1953, Jawaharlal Nehru formed the States Reorganization Commission to study the new demands that were emerging. And this commission consisted of Fazl Ali, H.N. Kunzuru and K.M. Panikkar. The States Reorganization Act 1956 became a very important instrument, and it now was going to decide the future course of action. Based on its report, it came up with the recommendation of dividing the country into states and 3 centrally administered areas. The government did not agree with the recommendation of this commission to divide the country into 14 states and 6 union territories under the States Reorganization Act of 1956. The states that were formed under States Reorganization Act were Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Bihar, Bombay, Jammu and Kashmir, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Madras, Mysore, Orissa, Punjab, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, while the union territories included Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Delhi, Himachal Pradesh, Lakshadweep, Minicoy, Amindivi Islands, Manipur and Tripura. Then if we talk about the next phase of reorganization, then it was in 1960s, following the spate of violence and agitation, that the state of Bombay was divided to form Gujarat and Maharashtra. In 1963, the state of Nagaland was created for the Nagas. It was meant to protect their culture and ethnicity. However, this particular division was done based on geographical concerns. The regions which had been under French and Portugal colonies, namely Chandarnagar, Mahe, Yamen, Karaikal, Goa, Daman, Diu, were either made to join with neighbouring states or union territories once they joined with India. Then Punjab Reorganization Act was passed in 1966, according to which the state of Punjabi speaking areas was made Haryana and the hilly regions joined with Himachal Pradesh. In addition, Chandigarh was made to serve as the joint capital for Punjab and Haryana. Then it was in 1970 that Himachal Pradesh State Act was passed, and by January 1971, Himachal Pradesh became the 18th state of India. In 1972, it was Tripura, Meghalaya and Manipur who became states under the North Eastern Region Reorganization Act of 1971, which was indeed a very important development. And it was in 1975 that Sikkim acquired the status of a state and became the 22nd state of India. As per the Statehood Act of 1986, Mizoram became the 23rd state in 1987, while Arunachal Pradesh acquired the status of a state in 1987. It was in 1987 that Goa also attained statehood, and under the Bihar Reorganization Act, Jharkhand was made a state in 2000. The Madhya Pradesh Reorganization Act enabled the formation of Chhattisgarh again in November 2000, and by November 2000, Uttaranchal became the 27th state of India. Telangana became the 29th Indian state in 2014 under the Andhra Pradesh Reorganization Act, and Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act also is very important. Until 2019, J&K exercised special powers under Article 35A. It empowered the state's legislature to define permanent residents of the state and enable them to exercise extraordinary powers and privileges. In addition, the state had its constitution and separate land inheritance law. However, on August 5, 2019, the Minister of Home Affairs Amit Shah introduced the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill in the Rajya Sabha, and as a result Article 370 including Article 35A got revoked. Further, the bill aimed at reorganizing the state of Jammu and Kashmir into the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir with assembly and the Union Territory of Ladakh without assembly. So we see that while language has played both the roles of being for and against the unity of the nation, therefore, need of the hour today is to play a fine balance between several centripetal and centrifugal forces of unity, and at the same time balancing these centralizing features of unity with the decentralized virtue of Indian federalism. So, Indian federalism is something that cannot be compromised, but at the same time not at the cost of unity of the country. States reorganization has also produced another impact in the internal dynamics of state politics, since some major caste and classes were the leading interests behind the demand for states reorganization, and the main beneficiaries. Formation of new states has also resulted in the proliferation of region and sub-region based political parties and groups demanding territories based on micro-ethnic identity. But given their size and concentration, they were not powerful enough to pose serious challenge to the system as a whole. So we see that in some cases, sub-caste level territorial authority as per the constitution has been conceded, which territorialized several conflicts. The successes of achieving territorial ambition by the major ethnic groups has also resulted in ill effects for the linguistic and ethnic minorities, who in turn have mobilized against ethnic deprivation and for the protection of their identity. Such minorities, often called micro-minorities, are quite sizable in numbers and proportion. So therefore, they cannot be neglected, and one cannot really only focus on fulfilling the desires and aspirations of bigger groups and neglecting minority groups or their claims. So if we consider the size and the concentration of smaller groups or of those segments of society who are not powerful enough to raise a voice or to pose a serious challenge to the system as a whole, but then one also cannot neglect the fact, or one cannot undermine the fact that if these cleavages continue to prevail in the system, then it is not good for the for the functioning of a strong and united India. So while the states reorganization has produced an internal dynamics in state politics, and it has also resulted in more active grassroots participation in democratic affairs, but this entire process is being manipulated also by major caste and classes, by groups, and this is detrimental to the efficient functioning of ethnic minorities. So the leading interests behind the demand for states reorganization may not always be valid, may not always be right in their demands, and the formation of new states may not benefit each and every individual or smaller groups or people belonging to the sub-region or ethnic minorities who have been given the status of micro-ethnic identity. and this needs to be carefully analyzed before we enter into a situation where more and more demands of separate statehood are raised, or they are even given a patient hearing. Thank you.